truly, like as an entrepreneur, like you are living the high of your life, of being in your power every single day. And if you can find that, if you can access that, it is so worth it to spend that time with yourself. And once you figure out what it is you want, manifest it, write it out, talk to people about it, like speak it into existence. Like everything in this world was once an idea. Like you can call that in.
You're listening to PowerFemme Radio. This is a podcast where ladies come together and try to share their opinions and empower each other to be better women in society.
Did he just say try? You're listening to PowerFemme, where women don't try, we do. Ladies, welcome back to the PowerFemme Podcast. Today, I am interviewing someone so incredibly special. Her name is Rhana Hashemi. She's a PhD student at Stanford University studying social psychology. She is also the founder of a company called No Drugs. That's KNOW Drugs. And they are dedicated to preventing overdoses amongst youth. She is such a power femme in every right. She has a huge, huge mission. And today we talk about how she really turned her mess into her message. So you're going to love this episode, and I can't wait to hear what you think. Let's dive in. Power Femmes, let's talk about the ultimate skincare secret. Dolce Du's Be Still Peptide Serum, aka Botox in a bottle. If you're ready to show up on camera looking fierce, this is your go-to. Why? Because the magic ingredient, argireline peptide, literally inhibits muscle contractions, giving you that tight, smooth skin we all crave. So say goodbye to fine lines and hello to the flawless, confident queen you are. Trust me, Dolce Du is here to brighten and soothe your skin, because when your skin feels good, you feel unstoppable. And guess what? You'll see a difference from the very first application. We all know that inflammation is the enemy, and reversing it means instant glow. So if you're ready to slay with gorgeous glowing skin, Dolce Du is your new BFF. You're episode 80.
Cool.
Wow.
I can't believe you've done 80 episodes. That's amazing.
I know.
It's super impressive.
So cool. Rhana Hashemi, welcome to the PowerFemme Podcast.
Thank you, Heidi.
Oh my God.
I'm so happy to be here.
What a treat. Mm-hmm. I'm like so glad we started recording immediately, because I don't want to miss anything. Okay, so
this is our catch up.
This is our catch up. We go way back.
Yeah.
Like how far back?
I met you freshman year of high school. You had just moved from Georgia to Beverly Hills.
So half of our lives.
Half of our lives, almost 15 years.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so 15 years ago. No, I'm gonna call it like 10 years ago, because we had a solid like friendship going, and we went through some things. There was some crazy things happening. And so I would say maybe 10 to 15 years ago. 10 years ago, you couldn't have told me that I would be sitting with you, interviewing you on my podcast, and asking you how you became known as the drug lady.
Yes. Yeah. It is crazy to think about it like that as well.
It's a beautiful journey.
Yeah.
There's so much to unpack here. I want to learn all about what you do, obviously, with No Drugs, the name of your company. That's KNOW Drugs.
Yeah,
what a beautiful...
no drugs, as in like don't tell people what to do, but just give them the knowledge to do what they want to do, as long as they know what they're doing.
How did you become known as the drug lady?
Yeah, let's start with like our friendship, because I think you were part of the origin story.
Wow. Honored.
Well, we had a lot of fun together in high school.
Yeah.
And a lot of that entailed partying. And as both of us with ADHD and neurodivergency, there was a combination of medication that came from doctors, but then also self-medication and like finding belonging within certain groups of friends that were like more open-minded and a little bit crazier and more mischievous and broke the rules. And I think all that was really innocent and sweet and fun, but a lot of it was like misguided, and we were learning through trial and error. And at the end of high school was when things started to get a little bit dark for me, and when my tolerance for alcohol increased, and I moved on to taking prescription pills that were not mine and mixing them with different types of substances, and like that just wasn't sustainable.
Yeah.
And so once I went into rehab and I began my journey of recovery, which I define as recovering parts of yourself, I don't identify as like sober.
Yeah.
I have a healthy relationship with drugs, but
Love
it required a recovery period, because like why was I using in such a chaotic way? I was lost.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's crazy because we shared the beautiful parts about being lost together. Like we kind of took care of each other during that time, but a lot of people didn't have really close, sweet friendships like we did.
Yeah.
And so that led me to want to change the way we dealt with kids who use drugs and how we talk to kids about drugs in general, because it felt like a lot of what we learned was by making mistakes. Yeah. A lot of our friends are not here anymore.
Sadly.
Yeah, like best friends. Shout out to Sam Coco. May he rest in peace always and forever. Yeah. So I just realized like the blessing that I had and to be able to like, what did I need as a teenager? You know, what I've created has always been about how can I take care of my like younger self and all of us.
As you said, this started out so innocent. It turned dark. You found yourself addicted to pills that were not yours, alcohol,
Xanax, death of me.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That was when like, I'm like, okay, I got to go to rehab.
Yeah. Can you talk to me? Like when was the moment? Cause first of all,
that I knew that I had to go.
Okay. Yeah.
I like friends, family did interventions like freshman year of college, because that's when, you know, my relationship with Vince fell apart because of what I was doing while I was so intoxicated. Like friends of mine that were not partying were like telling my mom like, hey, I think she has a problem. I was just like telling everyone to like F off. Like you don't, like I'm fine. There's nothing wrong. And I really believed that because I had to believe that. And that's the cognitive dissonance that happens with a lot of us. When we have unhealthy habits, we tell ourselves that we're just fine because we don't actually want to like deal with the reality of not being fine.
Right.
I went to community college. You did too, right?
Well, actually, Rhana, I went to FITM. I got a scholarship to the fashion.
Right.
I got a scholarship to the fashion school, and then I dropped out for acting school, and then I went to community college. You know, let's keep this on you. Just kidding. No, I mean, your path is amazing. You went community college, and then you went UC Berkeley, and then now you're a student at Stanford studying social psychology.
Yeah, and I was like basically a high school dropout, like 2.0, barely made it out. I think they just like pushed me out to get rid of me. But anyways, I digress. So at community college, I was taking classes in like psychology and sociology. And for the first time, I was falling in love with school.
Yeah.
It just was a completely different educational context than high school, where there was no busy work. You got to take smaller classes. Like the teachers didn't have like these like negative perceptions of me that were sort of like carried through year by year in high school. Like I was not a bad kid there. And so I would just like do my work, stay in the library. I figure out a method of like, okay, as long as I stay at school until I get my work done, I could go home and get as high as I want. And at the end of my first semester at Santa Barbara City College, I got straight A's. And like seeing in black and white on a report card, A, when I thought my whole life that I was dumb and that the only thing that I was like useful for was being like pretty and fun and the life of the party, which like was no longer serving me. Like I couldn't maintain this like, oh, I'm just this fun, bubbly girl that everyone likes to be with. Like I was deeply depressed and deeply insecure. And so when I saw those A's on my report card, I was like, whoa, like my perception of myself shifted, and I was like, I can actually be something else. And then I go home for winter break, like was, you know, kind of just like high the whole time.
Why? Because you were out of your routines and you didn't have like responsibilities?
Well, I was using during that first semester as well. I just was like created a buffer so that I was getting good grades still, and I was doing
like,
well.
I'm fine. It's
I'm
here
fine.
in black and white.
When I came back from that first semester, I think that's when I would say I was like a little bit addicted to Xanax.
Okay.
Because I was missing school. And by the second week of my second semester, I realized like I was just like neurons were not connecting. I was sitting in my anthropology class. I hadn't been there for 2 weeks. Like I was seeing the like those straight A's that I had start to plummet. And I walked out of the class and I called my mom, who at this point like was not really on speaking terms with me. And I told her like I want to go to rehab. And it was because that there's a term of like in harm reduction of you can't take away what you can't replace. I was getting a sense of identity from partying and a sense of community. And all of a sudden I saw another way, which was through school, which was ironic because I think I started to like drink and smoke as much as I did because of school and high school in the first place.
Right. No, totally. Because you are forming identities in high school.
And then in college, I found a different identity, which was the nerd. And so the
A
rest
little
is
sexy
history.
nerd.
Yeah. Hot nerd.
I could be a hot nerd.
It serves me so much more than being just like the party girl.
No, well, it's funny because I know you, and like when I think of you, like I do think of life of the party, gorgeous, right? But it's interesting how we can fall into the molds that people put us in, and we stay there. We think that's all that we're worth. We think that's all we can be. Yeah. And so I think it's really beautiful that by going out on your own and forging like a new path for yourself and seeking education, you found a new role that you could step into.
Yeah, I was more than that. Like I wasn't just, I still am I love partying. Like I still am that, but it's not my whole identity anymore. Right. And it's not where I get my sense of power at all.
So let me ask you this. When you found this new identity, did you experience this gap between like, no, this is what I can potentially be, and it's like my old life is pulling me back? Is that when you called your mom and you were like, Mom, I need to go to rehab? Was it like you saw the potential that you had? What was the thing that made you feel like, no, I'm wasting my life. Like I have to fix this?
I think the feeling of putting my mind to something like, okay, I'm going to do well at school. And actually seeing that through gave me a high that drugs never did. And it made me excited about something else. And I also saw the ways that I was like contributing in classes and speaking to the teachers. You know, I was only 18, but all of a sudden I felt like I had something to say.
Right.
And I liked that feeling. And it was sort of like that gap between like, okay, like there's this life that's available for me if I take this jump, or I can stay in my comfort zone of where I was. And when I saw that it was even possible to do that, I was ready to drop everything to take that next step.
I'm so proud of you, because that's sometimes like when you're dealing with addiction and with something so as strong as Xanax, right? I mean, it's a huge issue. Sometimes the grass being greener on the other side is like, it's just not enough. Yeah. It's not enough to cause you to make that change. And I remember seeing the shift happen. Like I remember being like, what? She's at UC Berkeley? Like what? And then now you're known as the drug lady. Yeah. And you've founded a company called No Drugs, KNOW Drugs. And I just love that. And can you tell us like what exactly is that?
So No Drugs is an educational organization that advances evidence-based, honest, reality-based drug education for youth, both in schools, but we also work on like national campaigns. And so
cool.
Essentially, it's a cheap shot for me to say this, but it's the opposite of DARE. So the same ways that we've seen.
Not you wearing a DARE shirt all through high school.
Yeah, like me wearing the DARE shirt as a mockery just made me want to be like, maybe let me just make DARE obsolete now.
Right.
So we basically consult on content and strategy. So a lot of schools are still stuck in the just say no era, or what I call the just say nothing, where they're not doing any drug education. Yeah. And we help them go from like 0 to 100 of like, how do you launch a curriculum? How do you train your teachers? How do you change your messaging? How do you change your policies? And so it's kind of like a full spectrum consulting organization.
Okay, this is amazing, because I have had so many conversations with girlfriends over the years where I'm like, yeah, they need to teach us about our periods, and they need to teach us about drugs, and you actually did it. Like you on a national level are having conversations with the government about this, and you're actually implementing these educational practices in these schools, and you're making a real difference. How is it different than when we were taught about drugs?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's like no one's coming in there and telling you what to do. And like that, I actually think that is a very arrogant stance for like a teacher to tell you, I think you shouldn't do drugs.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just like, you don't know these kids. And so what we do instead is teach them the science of the brain, teach them about how drugs actually work, teach them about what to do with your friends or yourself one day chooses to use. How do you prevent overdoses? How do you talk to your friends in a non-judgmental way? How do you like make sure that if you are going to use, you do it in the safest way possible? And more than anything, like having adults that you can turn to ask for help. Because I remember there was times in high school where I was like, I think I have a problem with drugs. But I didn't have anyone to talk to because I was already on bad terms with the school, and they were just ready for any excuse to kick me out.
Yeah.
So there was a very and if I told my mom, I'm definitely grounded.
Right.
So it's a lot of part of it is like breaking the stigma, opening up conversations, making kids feel safe, not punishing or judging or shaming anyone. And actually like drugs are really fun to learn about. Like it's actually just learning about your brain and your body.
DARE did a really good job of scaring us. You know, it's like, just say no, you're going to die. Also, I heard you reference this, and I thought it was real until this day. that if you take ecstasy, it's like taking an ice cream scoop out of your brain.
Yeah.
Is that true?
It's not true.
What?
It's complete BS. And the fact that actually, they retracted the study that even said that. The study that came out, I think it was in the early 2000s, the scientists mistakenly gave the participants like high doses of methamphetamine instead of ecstasy, and then published results that said that you had holes in your brain if you took ecstasy. And even after that study was debunked, the National Institute of Drug Abuse continued to run the campaigns that showed these golf ball holes in your brain. And I remember that was the only ecstasy education I got. And it was 2012, getting ready for Coachella, like had my outfits planned, like was on the Coachella diet as we are in Los Angeles as teenage girls. And I was like, I'd gone for Coachella for now like 3 years. We had gone 2 years together.
Yes.
And like, I like was smoking and drinking, but by senior year, I was like, okay, like I've been in the rave scene for like 3 years now. I know of ecstasy. Like, I think I want to do this. And I remember like, for like 2 weeks in math class, going back and forth in my mind, obviously not paying attention to the teacher, like, should I do ecstasy? And then I was like, but I don't want holes. But should I? But I really don't want holes. And then at one point I was like, whatever, I'll take a hole. And like, because I was fed a lie, there was no actual precautions that I was taught about how to take. Don't mix pills, test your drugs. You're probably not gonna wanna sleep or drink. You're probably gonna be more sexually open. I made every single mistake possible because there was no real education. It was just misinformation and scare tactics in the place of honest information. And Sunday night of Coachella, I think you were with us.
Mm-hmm. Don't ask me if I recall. I was just with you guys. Yes.
And Justice was coming on. And like we're like running in the sunset to like make it to like the Justice set. It was like, do the D-A-N-C-E.
Oh, yes.
And I remember hearing this from a distance. I had just popped 2 more pills after like 3 days nonstop of rolling. Like, who does that? Like,
yeah, I just remember everybody is like, they would go so hard. I remember. Was this EDC or was
No, this was not EDC. This was Coachella. Maybe I'm mixing it up.
Is showing.
I'm sorry. You brought me in. I was like, I'm your shadow, Heidi.
This is so great. Listen, for everybody who's listening, we all have a past. And like, again, your beautiful, crazy, chaotic path, it has led you to this higher purpose.
Yeah.
So, hey, fair game.
Yeah. Anyways, I lost consciousness. I had effectively an ecstasy overdose because of all of those mistakes that I made. And I walked away from that weekend really thinking like, wow, like I'm such a bad person for doing X, Y, and Z. And then years later, I realized, wow, that whole golf ball hole thing in your brain was actually not true. And if only I'd received the type of information that we provide through No Drugs Now today, maybe it would have deterred me from not using, but definitely I would have known how to use in a safer way to prevent any sort of accidents.
What are like some practical things that like that the general public should know? Like, you know, we shouldn't all be walking around thinking that we're getting ice cream scooped out of our brains, right?
Yeah. Okay. So every drug is different, but some general principles, especially like 2024, we're having this huge contamination crisis. Like back then, like you would buy ecstasy and it probably had meth in it or like, you know, baking soda or any, like, you know, it just was never pure. Now the contamination issue is involving fentanyl, which is a really strong synthetic opioid. And like micrograms of this can kill you. Like you need a speck of sand to get in there for this to be lethal. So you just want to assume that with anything that you're getting from the illicit market, it has fentanyl in it.
Wow.
Maybe that deters you from using. If not, you have to carry Narcan, which is an opioid reversal agent, over the counter available. You got to test your drugs. Definitely don't want to mix your drugs, like because this will overwhelm your nervous system. Those are just like how to not die 101.
Yeah,
but
it's
then,
good. Good stuff.
But then it's also just like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Like, and not in like a judgmental way, but like in a way of being curious about yourself. Like, what is your intention? Like, is this the right setting? Like, are you sleep deprived? Are you hungry? Are you dehydrated? Because like drugs don't give you chemicals. They take what's already in there. And if you're not like building brain chemicals by like taking care of your brain and your body, you're just not going to have much to deal with in the first place. So there's like many angles of like what the public should know. But I think from a public health standpoint, we need to make sure people don't die when they take their drugs.
Such a good place to start. Rhana, like if there was one thing that you wish everyone knew about drugs, what would that thing be?
They're powerful.
They are
They're
powerful.
super powerful. And that doesn't mean like they're bad either.
Right.
Like some drugs have like amazing medical uses. for example, like I'll give you an example for me. Like I'm the kind of person that coffee overwhelms my nervous system. Is coffee bad? No. But when I take coffee, there's too much adverse effects. I'm not able to sleep no matter what time I take it. I kind of get too jittery. I have a crash. So like every body is different and drugs are really powerful and we need to have a lot of humility. You know, it's just like just because everyone else is using coffee does not mean that it's right for my system.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of times, especially these like more normalized drugs like alcohol, nicotine, or caffeine, we think that because everyone else is doing it and they seem fine, it's okay for us. But like you have 100,000 neurons that are completely different than my 100,000 neurons. Like we're gonna have different reactions and we have to make individualized choices with drugs.
Such a good point. Like I think when people around us are doing things, we just assume, oh, it's fine. That's safe.
Right.
This is normal. Maybe at first it's not like that, but then
Yeah.
it starts to like reach a point where it's like regular. And as you were saying that, I immediately thought like, what are the kids up to now? Like, what's the thing that everyone's doing now? And it's these e-cigarettes.
Yes. I'm like, my ego has prevented me from ever touching e-cigarettes.
I will
I'm
not
like,
touch them.
Like I did a lot of other things, like, but no way am I putting a battery pack to my mouth.
No batteries and no coffee for Rhana. Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Actually, this is crazy. My friend, Shy, he was in the hospital a couple weeks ago for some lung issue. He was like literally gonna die from pneumonia. That he contracted pneumonia because he had some lung thing going on that was literally a result of moisture in his lungs. And the moisture, if you take the word vapor is water.
Yeah.
And so it's building moisture in his lungs. He almost died.
Yeah.
Like kids are dying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we're going through a giant social experiment by these companies right now. Like we don't know. Yeah, like for most of civilization, people have like smoked something, like whether it was like, you know, teas or herbs or whatever, but we haven't like vaporized oils and inhaled them. I would say actually to that point of like what I actually really wish for people to do is just listen to their bodies and take care of their bodies. Like that, it's that piece of like having a relationship with yourself first before you bring in a relationship with a strong psychoactive substance. Like the same way it's really cliche, but they say like you have to love yourself before you love someone else. I think it's like you have to find your own power. You have to find your own high. You have to find the thing that gets you really juiced up on dopamine before you like externally add it in, because that can just confuse your system.
That is so beautiful what you just said. Like, wow. So beautifully said. Find your own power. So many people are looking to...
Because drugs are powerful.
Yeah, they're looking to drugs for their power, for their fun, for their self-expression, to be themselves, to have a good time.
And this was our experience in high school. Like I don't think we felt powerful within the educational context that we were in. Like we were told that we were not smart. We were told that we were not, you know, the brightest ones in the room. And we like sought our power through like these substances.
Yeah. Partying, connecting with others. I mean, there's no part of me that even enjoys alcohol anymore. Like, I don't know. How about you?
No. Like, I mean, I could like enjoy a glass of wine, but like if it disappeared off the face of the planet, it wouldn't change my life.
It would be
all.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about building a relationship with yourself, and that's obviously something that you learned how to do.
Yeah.
What's been the most effective thing for you in learning more about you?
It's such a good question. It's so multifaceted because I'm so multifaceted.
Yeah.
Like I'm really complex. I think the foundation of it was I couldn't like have a relation with myself if I didn't feel good in my body. And that required me to take like, it was fundamentally like changing my diet, changing exercise, like sleeping well. Like these were all things I neglected for so long. And why I'm so grateful that I like entered recovery at 18, because I was still like in a somewhat plastic state of like it was really easy to learn these new habits. And so as I started to feel more at peace in my own body rather than like constantly in this like hyper activated state of anxiety, which like I still am like baseline anxious person.
Totally. Yeah.
But like meditating, eating healthy, like eating foods that like didn't cause those spikes and those crashes. And then like once like that foundation was there, I think it was just following things that drew my attention and just trusting that. Like I was very lucky that when I transferred from community college, I went to UC Berkeley. And it was at UC Berkeley that I was in this class. It was the first class I'd taken, just, you know, those like filler classes that are like, they're like one unit. And you just like sign up for them because it's like positive leadership.
Yes. Yeah, I would have been there.
Yeah. So like I entered this positive leadership class and we're sitting in a circle and the teacher is in the front of the class barefoot with like a little like gong in his hand. I'm like, this is the most Berkeley course I've ever seen. And we sit down and he tells us that I'm not going to teach you anything. That actually the purpose of this class is for you to teach us something. And the entire semester was about articulating our vision and beginning the process of actualizing it. It was the first time that someone stopped to ask me, what do you want to create? What is the problem that you want to solve? It was this simple question that launched my career.
Wow.
And that class just gave me a 3-month period of like, okay, like write this out, begin writing, researching, like who are the people in this space? It gave me the foundation so that when the class ended, I was like, wait, I think I actually want to do this.
So is that where you came up with no drugs?
That was when I came up with no drugs. Yeah.
That is so freaking cool. So, okay, how do we take it from this cute idea
to launching it
and having it be a national success?
So I think a lot of times people see the success and they forget all the grunt work. It was really hard.
So it's been years.
It's been about a decade now that I've been doing 8 years to be exact. It was 2014 when I took this class and it's 2024 now, but I didn't formally start the business until 2016. I think the foundation of it was like get really clear about what it is you care about. Like the process of like writing things out got me more and more excited about it. And then I was really lucky because at Berkeley, they let you create student-run classes. And so I got to pilot this essentially to an audience.
Cool.
And I booked a room for 30 people, created a syllabus, launched it on like the course explore page. And on the first day, like 30 people didn't show up, 60 people did. And they were pouring outside of the class. And
were you like, oh my God,
yeah, I
was going to have to
freaking out.
teach in front of this class?
I was like, oh my gosh, like this is much more desired than what I expected it to be. The class ended up going on for 6 quarters, like beyond even my stay at Berkeley. But it was testing it out with a small group of people, essentially,
right.
And being like, is this wanted? Do people resonate with this? And when you see that, like when you see that people are vibing with what you have to say, you have no option.
Right.
Like I remember calling my mom crying and being like, I don't think I'm going to go into real estate, Mom. I don't know how I'm going to make money, but I have to do this. And she's like, it's okay. You're like 21 years old. Like give this a shot. If like it doesn't work for you by 25, like you're still young, you change around. But I remember being afraid of not doing real estate.
That is so funny.
I was like, what the hell is a drug educator? Like,
right.
Do you make money? Like, I like shoes. I like clothes.
Right.
Like,
I know.
Like, this is also part of who I am. Like, how do I have both of these things? Like, my purpose and also the lifestyle that I want.
First of all, one gets into real estate for one reason. Right? Like, obviously, we want to make a lot of money. You know?
Exactly.
And that's great. Get your bag, girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Get your YSL. Yes, the shoes. The shoes are amazing. And it is like such a beautiful thing when the thing you're passionate about, people vibe with it, but also you're like, okay, wait, actually, like I can make a living doing this. So what did it look like from taking it to this class that everybody was interested in to being your full-time job? And you're still a student.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm sure Stanford was like, yeah, the drug lady, come on in.
I was shocked. I was like, why?
But it's so unique. It's so cool. I'm sure your application was like so different. I mean, just with that intention behind it. I think you mentioned this early in the beginning. It's like, what is your intention with drugs, right? But like that question, I think for me, that question has changed my entire life. Like I ask myself that question every single morning.
And you need to, because you change every day. Like it's like you're not going to be the same person every day. So the same way that you have to constantly change your relation with drugs, you should also evaluate your relation with work as well. Yeah. So right when I was graduating, I was like, oh no, like I don't have anyone to hire me. Like there's no organization that exists.
You're unhireable at this point.
Unhireable.
Me too.
And there was just like this one organization that like was doing work that was similar, but they were out in New York and I didn't want to move to the East Coast. And I was like, damn. Actually, no, I think this is more relevant to this podcast, so I'll bring this up. I've never shared this before. There was, I wrote an honors thesis. And the honors thesis was the fallacy of abstinence-only drug education. And that was when I really just like articulated both the history and also laid out my vision for the path forward. And there was this one guy in the that I had was the most cited man in my thesis. He was a researcher that had researched drug education. He hadn't created drug education programs, but he was a researcher of why Just Say No failed. I had put this guy on a pedestal. And when I finished my thesis and I was like, okay, like I'm looking for a job, I reached out to him. I was like, hey, like I'm a huge fan of your work. This is my thesis. You're most cited man in here. I would love to learn if there was opportunities to join your team because I didn't see any other path than going to follow this man.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, I encourage you to submit a formal application where our organization, which was like this like research consulting education thing, similar to what I'm doing, is hiring. So I applied and they accepted me for a first round of interviews and they offered to fly me out to Oregon where they were based.
Wow.
I was so stunned. Like this was like my first big girl job. I'd worked at American Apparel and Abercrombie.
Oh my God, never forget. We worked at Abercrombie together, y'all.
Yeah, we were Abercrombie models. AKA.
Hey, what's going on?
Make sure you check out the stocking stuffers.
Oh my God, yeah, check us out on Facebook.
Trauma. So I remember like with my mom going to Zara and getting my big girl uniform because at that point I was still wearing like booty shorts and combat boots.
Yes.
And I needed like my slacks and like my proper tops and like I was really taking myself seriously.
Yes.
So the guy flies me out to Oregon and his company, like his organization, there's a lot of women that were working there and the interviews all day were at his home, which is where they take a lot of their meetings. Because there was a lot of women there, it kind of didn't like, no flags were raised about, hey, this is weird. Like I'm in a man's home. And after the day of interviews, we go out to dinner. They offer me the job. I feel like I'm so happy. And we go back because my stuff was still left at his place. And we go back after dinner because he was going to drop me off at the hotel. And essentially he like discloses that he's like deeply attracted to me and doesn't like physically make a pass at me, but like, you know, put me in an uncomfortable position where he projected his desires onto a 21-year-old woman. And I think he was 60. And all of a sudden this like all this work to like be seen as someone who's serious and professional and has value intellectually was like down the drain. And I was like not only just like deeply insulted, but like ready to drop all of this. And I like quickly called an Uber, got out of his car, like was crying on the way back to the hotel, called one of my mentors. And he was a male as well. And he basically like heard me say like, I don't want to join this field because when you blur the lines with drugs, you're also blurring the lines with sex. And with every field, there's these issues of like men in power, like projecting their desires.
Right.
It's like
also just pointing out just like you're this young, ambitious, you idolize him and like he gives you the job, just so unprofessional on his part. And also I can just see the manipulation. I've experienced it. So I felt belittled. You opening up about this right now. Like, wow. Yeah. Continue.
So the guy on the phone, the mentor was like, I hear you, but are you really going to let this prick take away your dreams? And I was like, no, I'm not. And so I fly back to California. At this point, I am now officially unhireable because the one man who wanted to hire me actually just wanted to sleep with me. Yeah. And I, realized that all his work is on the internet and I'm just going to take it and do it better.
Yes.
And that's exactly what I did. I was not going to let the fact that I didn't have a direct mentor stop me. And so I basically just started going around to conferences and asking people what was the drug education program at your school. And I landed my first job working for the Oakland Unified School District. And this was probably the most important job of my life, of my entire career today, because I was in the trenches. And this was for 3 years. I was working in like school districts where the kids are these beautiful, sweet, sweet angels, but they have complex needs and the environments are under-resourced. Like I didn't have water or clean sanitary bathrooms to use for the first 3 years of work. I didn't have health insurance. Wow. But if I could figure out how to build drug education programs in places that had so little and there was so much need, I realized I could do it anywhere. And I remember during that time, like my friends had graduated from Berkeley. They had like these like high-tech consulting jobs. And they were making a lot of money. And I'm like, sleeping in the living room and like renting out the bedrooms of my apartment. And my mom told me that if you want to be the general one day, you have to be a foot soldier first. And this was like one of the best career advices I've ever gotten because I really did become a foot soldier. I worked from the ground up. I saw what the challenges were for the kids and for the adults at a really, really grassroots level. And now, last week, I designed the drug education program for the state of Tennessee. I understand what the challenges are on the ground because I worked my way up rather than just being this like, and I think that's why my things work is because I understand what people need at various levels because I worked my way up.
You literally forged a path that wasn't there, Rhana.
Mm-hmm.
This is incredible. And also I'm just
and it was really scary. Like,
oh my God, it's terrifying. There's no like signs of success. You're like, well, there's this one guy and like he's a creep. So like, I don't really know what
I couldn't call him up again and ask him for advice.
No.
And it was really, it was scary.
Did you, by the way, like, how did you close that with him? You just never saw him again?
He reached out to me the next day and I was like, I want to meet in a formal place and get a formal apology from you.
Good
and
for you, Rhana.
We met at a bookstore and he like sat across from me and I like told him what he did wrong.
Good for you.
And he apologized formally because he wanted me to work for him because he was afraid of losing me like that. And obviously I wouldn't work for him. And I actually never even opened up about this because, you know, my idea was like, I'm going to take his job and do it better. And I'm going to support other women because a lot of these fields that are undeveloped, that are like, haven't been fleshed out, like there's not a lot of female mentorship in it. And that was a really hard part about what I was doing was like, I didn't have anyone to look up to. And the one guy was a creep.
Yeah. I'm proud of you for using your voice with this person who's supposedly an authority, even when you at that point didn't know if you were going to be able to continue down the path. It's something that I struggled with. Like, wow, we were just on the same wavelength, just like different paths, but same wavelength. And I struggled with it for years with, you know, being like in the entertainment industry and just the power dynamic. Yeah, it's just so not a great space. But just the power dynamic with men and people who are in authority and then not being able to use my voice or even just feeling like I did something wrong. Like, did you feel like you did anything wrong at your interview?
Yeah. Like, oh, did I like, you know, this was like, oh, I'm too friendly 101, you know, like we all been like, oh, like, was I too, like, cause I am a warm person and like, that experience, it changed me a little bit. I feel more reserved ever since that incident around men, especially men in professional environments. And it was sad because it took away a little bit of my innocence, but it also gave me a reality check. I remember calling my mom the next day and telling her what happened. And she showed empathy with me, but she was also like, welcome to the club.
Oh,
yeah.
The club.
The club. Yeah.
It's the worst club.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it is what we deal with. And that's why it's like PowerFemme. Like that's why like women really should be supporting other women because like not only are we dealing with other sort of dynamics, but we also may not feel safe in our workspaces because we're not taken as seriously by these when men project onto us. It's like, just because you have a crush on someone doesn't mean you say it.
No, no. Or assume that it's wanted.
I was insulted. I was like,
you're like, what about this?
Yes.
What about this?
Like the audacity
says I want to be with
that you have.
No, there's such a funny, like unrelated side story. There's a guy who like is on my street and he like definitely lives in his van. And like he has like some bong contraption in the back or whatever. I don't know. I've seen him doing weird things and he's like, hi, I'm Brad. Nice to meet you. And I'm like, oh, hi, I'm Heidi. He's like, who's your dog? He's like talking to me. He drove by the other day, like definitely knowing his drugs. Okay. He was definitely not sober. He's in his van and he just like looks out the window and he's like, hey, Heidi, you want to go for a ride? And I was like, what about this?
Wants to get in your van.
Do you think wants to get into your van? Like, absolutely not.
Yeah, and it's like fun and cute until this is our professional environments.
Right. So do you have any advice for women who are working on building their voice and using their voice and speaking up when something isn't right? Or because, you know, I think we all kind of deal with that, like, oh, let's just be nice or just be polite or don't be rude or don't be too much. Do you have any advice for that?
Nonviolent communication was one of the earlier things I got myself trained in, which is basically a communication framework that you can both use interpersonally between two people and also intrapersonally. It's super valuable for a variety of reasons.
Oh my God, let's talk about it.
And it basically, it's like a 4-step process of like acknowledge objectively what happened. And this is actually really hard for a lot of people because we want to say you always did that or like you you push yourself onto me. Like, I even say like you harassed me. Like, because these kinds of things can elicit defensiveness. You state objectively exactly what happened in a way that cannot be disputed. The second step is saying how it made you feel. And the third step is because of what need or value was violated or unmet. And the fourth step is what will bring balance or harmony back into this dynamic between us. And it's a communication framework that focuses more on like, how do you foster understanding rather than be right?
Wow.
Because I didn't need to be right. I needed him to understand what he did so he can hopefully never do that to somebody again. And it was
good on you for teaching him. It's not your job. He's an
adult. It's not my job.
But good on you.
Yeah, but I couldn't walk away with like letting him get away with that because my dude has done this before. Like you don't like this wasn't his first time making a pass on a younger woman.
No, and it might not be the last. Who knows?
Exactly. So I think that it's you don't have to bring it up. You know, you don't like sometimes it's like not safe to. But for me, like that was because this has happened again, and like. This communication framework is what sort of helped me practice structure. Like also like my work wife at that time, Frances Fu Shingi, we practiced together. Like I called her up. I'm like, hey, like this is how I'm going to say it. And like
role play.
Yeah, role playing this together because like she got it,
Yes.
And so it's a lot of it is like having that support of your work wives, but then also having the tools to be able to communicate in a way that is effective.
Yeah. And also being of sound mind and having your clarity and not being under the influence, right? I'm sure that was an empowered move, an empowered moment for you. So for anybody listening, when you call your girlfriends and you ask like, should I say this? What I do? Yes, it's great. It's normal. This is a normal thing. And like role play is so important. I role play all my like big conversations always. I'm always constantly like getting reps in. So like I'm like, even if I'm preparing for like a speech, I'm like, okay, these are my reps. So if I was going to have a difficult conversation, I would try to practice it a little bit. Could we like do a little role play with this framework? I know that's kind of cheesy, but like just for somebody who's listening to this, who's like, I don't know, help me think of a scenario where this would apply. Like,
let me actually, because another way that I actually used this the most was like with myself.
Great.
Because like when I was in the beginning of this entrepreneurial journey, it was really isolating. I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I was doubting myself a lot of the times.
Yes.
And I was struggling like with, being like a person in recovery, like a healthy person while also like putting something out in the world that like was really valuable, or I perceived to be very valuable. And so, actually, no, we can do it interpersonally between us. Like, give me a scenario. Let's.
So, I mean, we could just use. Let's use like an employer situation.
Okay.
Right. So you're hired by someone. It's an amazing opportunity, right? You get this amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
Who are you?
I'm going to be the person who is getting hired by you at your workplace.
Okay, so
and
I'm the creep. Got
you're the person who's like basically let's like take it down a notch and just say like you're the person that's like making this environment a little bit difficult for me. Like maybe you're condescending, maybe you don't like compliment me enough, like whatever. Like I have to give you feedback because I'm feeling uncomfortable in this workspace. Like I want to be here,
right?
But this is like not really working for me, and so as always, like you have to ask permission to enter someone's mind to be like, are you open for some feedback? Because if I just got accurate the feedback, you're like, you could not be open.
Right.
So Heidi, like, thanks so mumuch for this job. Like, can I give you some feedback about my experience?
Yeah, that would be great.
So like when, you called me into that meeting and you talked about my work in a critical lens in front of these new clients, you said X, Y, and Z. You said like, oh, like you, these are some like really ugly color schemes. I don't know. Like I'm objectively just telling you what you said. That made me feel sad because it's really important for me to feel valued in my workplace. And like, I know that you value me because you hired me. And so one thing that maybe I would appreciate moving forward is if you wanted to give me feedback, to not do it in front of the clients, because I think that makes us, that doesn't make me feel valued.
So good.
So it's like, it's really important to not just say what they did wrong, but what you need to restore the balance so that your need of feeling valued was met.
I feel like that was so classy, Rhana. That was perfect. I think so many women are like afraid to be rude.
No, it's not.
That was not rude.
And that's where like the values piece is important, because like we have universal values. Like you understand the importance of feeling valued. Like, you know, you're not saying like you made me feel sad. Like I felt sad because it's important for me to feel valued. And if you next time do it like this, I will feel valued.
Brilliant. You're giving them the opportunity to do better too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you could look up nonviolent communication. Like again, like this was one of the earlier things that I got trained in that has been so helpful with like workplace conversations, but also, you know, romantic relationships, personal relationships, because like as women, we're not like some guys are literally like robots when it comes to their businesses.
We love
like,
them. We love them. We love the men.
But it's like we are like dynamic, nurturing, caring people who have like careers, but also have relationships that really matter to us. And like, we're a little bit more emotional. Like the emotions affect us more. You know, it's not just logical, but I think it also makes us powerful if we learn how to take those emotions as cues of like, hey, your values or your needs are not being met. And this is actually how you can change the situation to feel more, to have your needs met.
So good. On that, actually, Rhana, I think this probably ties into our conversation at large, is like some people, they don't even know that their values aren't even being met. They're just living life sad, or and they're numbing themselves, or they're escaping, or right? Like what were the cues for you, and what do you think the cues are in general to start like building that relationship with yourself and that voice within you to speak up and use your voice?
Your emotions are your best friend. And I don't even mean this in the cliche way.
Yes.
Like, comfortable emotions, like happy, joy, elation, cool. Honestly, I don't like those don't really matter so much in terms of information points. What you want to look out for are the emotions that make you feel uncomfortable, that things that make you feel like you want to run away from yourself. Like as soon as you get those, let me actually give you a story about this. So when I no longer had a problematic relationship with drugs, I enter food as the next thing that I had a problematic relationship with. And I was self-medicating these uncomfortable feelings with food. And I developed an eating disorder a few years after coming out of rehab, which is not uncommon for people who have any sort of like addictive behaviors. You replace one with another, because rehab didn't actually teach me to have a good relationship with myself. And
Interesting.
they teach you to be sober. You know, and they maybe like make you more aware of like when you use X, Y, Z happens, like they kind of change like your reasoning, but it's not really about like, well, how do you be like a really healthy, thriving human being? Maybe not all, but the ones that I went to.
Yeah.
So I noticed that I was like binging on food, and after I would binge, I would purge. And I felt crazy. I was like, what am I doing? Like I felt absolutely nuts. I didn't think that there was anything that could help me. And I started working with this like female coach. Shout out to coaches.
Shout out to coaches. I wanted to touch on mentors with you. I didn't know you had them. This is amazing.
Like my whole career is because I had coaches.
Me too.
Because there was no mentors in my field. So coaches helped me create my field. Like,
that's amazing.
Yeah. So this one woman, this is where I got introduced to nonviolent communication, because one of the tools of nonviolent communication is this feelings list and then the needs inventory. And what she had me do is every single time you feel the need to like overeat, pause and identify the feeling and the potential need or value that it's related to. Because when your needs or values are not being met, your body signals that to you through uncomfortable feelings, uncomfortable sensations, uncomfortable emotions. And if you can begin to figure out the patterns between that, you realize where in your life you're living out of alignment. And my use of food was my way of escaping the emotions rather than becoming just best friends with them. And so she changed my mindset around this, like 100% cured this like eating disorder that I thought was uncurable, because I started carrying around a journal. And every single time I felt, uncomfortable or anxious, I would begin to like write out, okay, this is the feeling and this is the need that's not being met in this moment. How can I bring balance? What can I do to help me meet that need? And I started to have so much fun with this that like even like post eating disorder struggles, I would just continue for a year carrying around this list, and I learned so much about myself.
I'm going to start doing this.
Uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah.
Every single time they come up, I'm like, oh yes, here's an opportunity to like figure out another unmet need.
I love you. That is amazing. That's proof. The proof is in the pudding.
What a proof is in the
We're
pudding.
healed. This
Yeah.
is good, because it's so normal to instead reach for a joint, reach for a puff bar, reach for
social media. This was pre like Instagram.
Scrolling.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's so important for us to sit with those feelings and see what is it they're teaching us, because whatever you resist is going to persist and it's going to pop out in another way. Like what I really was reaching, the cookie resembled pleasure for me because I was overworking myself. Like I was so steadfast focused on building this business that I was not giving myself breaks. And so my only source of pleasure was this cookie, but that wasn't a sustainable way of meeting my needs. I was like mindlessly trying to meet my needs.
Yeah. So, okay, this is beautiful because now we can go into entrepreneurship and balance, because entrepreneurship is so crazy. And I don't know if there really is such a thing as balance. I work so much too. So I can
7 days a week.
It's 7 days a week. I mean, you become an entrepreneur to have freedom, but like also you're marketing, you're sales, you're the coach, you're all the things, you wear all the hats. And so I can just really relate to like the late nights and just being so driven. And it's good. Thank God we're driven by something. Like this is exciting. Yeah. But what are some things that you do now as this like successful entrepreneur to help you stay balanced?
I mean, again, it's the foundations of like drink 3 liters of water a day. Like, not like, if I do, go out on the weekend, and if I like, if I'm partying in any sort of capacity, whether it's like I'm staying up late or like I'm smoking some weed, like I don't let anything get in the way of my work. Like my work is my purpose and my calling is my priority. And so I structure my life and my relationships around what is actually going to serve me and this baby that I'm trying to create, who's like, I think she's like a preteen now.
It's literally, Rhana, it is like giving birth. It is like giving actual birth. I know. My baby's
So
7.
you need to be like a healthy carrier first, because I think in like, in like some like woo-woo ways, like you're channeling something. Like my great ideas are not my ideas.
No,
they're
it's
coming
bigger
from
than
somewhere
you.
else, and I'm just a conduit. And for me to be a conduit, I need to be a clear vessel. And so like my meditation practice, my exercise, my, feeling just like confident. Like I saw this thing that you were doing about like dopamine dressing, like all these things that make me feel empowered will help me be a clearer conduit for what I want to bring out to this world. So I think there's like just like the basic self-care stuff, boundaries with people, boundaries with plans. But I honestly think that like when you find that thing that you love so much, this actually comes really easy. It's easy to say no because you have something that's such a strong yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's been 8 years. I still work like 6 days a week, but I love, like I'm so spiritually fulfilled. It doesn't feel like work. I just don't see myself doing anything else. Like if you were like $6 million to like go do like administrative work at Google, I'd be like, no, I couldn't.
I know.
But like, I don't know, like I think that I surround myself with people that inspire me, like whether that's like personally or like professionally, like going to conferences, like going to places where people are, like listening to podcasts, reading books, like constantly learning. You don't need, like, I'm doing a PhD for separate reasons now, but I am like constantly trying to stay on top of my field, like learning as much as possible. Yeah, I don't know.
These are all amazing things. These are all.
It is kind of basic.
It is, but it's not. I mean, it's like, it's one thing to know something. It's an entirely different thing to implement it.
Yeah, and I think there's like a piece about like being okay with shutting yourself out from the world for a little bit. Like, like turning off the distractions, like staying at home, because it's like in those boredom, it's in the quiet where you're gonna get those insights, when you're gonna have the breakthroughs. And if you're filling your schedule up all the time, especially like at this point for me, like the plates are spinning on their own. I feel like I'm at a good place where I can like check out for a while and like everything's gonna be okay. Like the ship is not gonna sink. But that is like the last 2 years. Like I was on 24/7, and I think that like a huge part of it is like you need to be passionate about it, because otherwise it's not worth it. And sometimes your passions are gonna change, and that's really scary as an entrepreneur, because your identity is like PowerFemme or a drug lady,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I remember there was a time where I was like, I don't want to be the drug lady anymore.
Really?
Yeah, and that scared the hell out of me because I didn't know what else I could be. Like, again, it became another identity that trapped me.
Yeah.
And that was sort of like when I went back to school because I was like, I think I need to recreate myself. I've outgrown this stage. And I don't know, I just like want to feel like I'm constantly growing and something needs to let me up. If I'm not lit up, why would I be doing these like crazy hours?
No, totally. So yeah, I mean, my best advice that I can give to anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur, anybody who wants to be successful at what it is, it has to be bigger than you, but it can't be about you.
Yeah.
It just, you got to take you out of it, you know?
At this point, it's like, I don't like no longer say like, what did Rhana need when she was younger? I'm like, what does Jessica need? I don't know who Jessica is, but Jessica is like, yeah, she's like the 16-year-old girl in high school that's like a little bit lost, is getting like maybe hypersexualized because she's cute and like, has started getting like into partying and she needs help. Like she needs she needs my offering. And so as soon as I start feeling like I have no motivation, I'm like, what does Jessica need? You know, what does Jessica's mom need? Because I also do content and programming for parents. But fundamentally, it's what you do. It's coaching. Like I really think that every entrepreneur needs a coach. Like this is a non-negotiable. Therapy, yeah, they'll help you, but like it's different. Like
it's different.
Like I got into therapy 2 years ago for the first time. Not first time, I did it as a teenager, but I had a coach all 10 years of launching this because like I needed a dedicated space to like plan and strategize and get tools and resources. Like I would say, aside from like taking care of my body, like having the coach,
monumental.
Like, and female coaches too,
yes. So
who are entrepreneurs. Like,
yes. Okay. Literally speaking, like you're just,
I swear I'm not promoting.
No, like
I actually didn't even know what you did.
I know this, guys, we really haven't seen each other in like 10 years.
Is unplanned.
So, we saw each other at the 10-year reunion, but, what are some of the things that your coaches do with you that's different than a therapist?
I think it's like, okay, a lot of what we worked on in the beginning was like the imposter syndrome, the failure stuff. Like, okay, you failed with this client. It didn't resonate with them. Like, what's the strategy? How you're going to go back around with this? Or it was like, how do you talk to people about conflicts that you're having? The nonviolent communication work was what was coming up. As someone who has ADHD, it was really hard for me to write.
Yeah.
Like I talk. Really, it's easy for me to talk, but like I think so fast and I think in a non-linear way that writing was hard. And so they helped me reframe, instead of trying to write for a neurotypical person, like create for someone who's neurodivergent as well, like create for yourself. Like a lot of it was like mindset reframing and getting like practical tools about how do you structure contracts? Like how do you negotiate for more money? Yep. It was really anything that came up that was a roadblock that they supported me with. I worked with Megan Lipset, who's my coach, for about 4 years in the beginning of this. She eventually went in to do a PhD, so she had to leave me, but I was also like, I felt good at that point, but she was my rock.
It's really important to work with coaches. It's really important to work in a way that works for you. And you've really illustrated that for us today. Like seriously, you're so eloquent and so just well-spoken and truly like a pro at what you do. Is there anything that you have going on right now that the PowerFemmes can tune into, or is there any way we can keep up with you?
Yeah. So it's actually a nice segue from the coaching thing, because one of the things I've been trying to get better at in terms of mastering my craft is the storytelling piece. I saw that like while I'm doing this PhD, like what I do have capacity for in terms of like maintaining clientele was I do like traveling speaking engagements. So I go to schools, I go to organizations, and I give talks. And so I am available for folks who want to bring in a drug educator, tell both like a personal story, but also weave in the science. People can learn more at knowdrugs.com, KNOW drugs. But really, like, again, back to the coaching piece is like anytime I wanted to up level, coach. Yeah. Like, and there's coaches for different reasons. There's like coaches for general business stuff, but then there's coaches for specific skills. And it's so fun feeling like, okay, like I've been doing this for like 8 to 10 years. How does this stay exciting for me? Well, like my next goal is like, I want to be a communication ninja. Like I just want to slice through.
Yes.
And like investing in building these skills is what keeps me sort of excited, because I've honestly been saying the same thing for 8 years. Like my
right? I know. It's like, how many times can I say the same thing?
Exactly. Like I started to get bored of the stories. I got bored of the facts. But like now that I feel that I am changing the way that I communicate, and like my like talks sound different. They look different because of these coaches.
So good, Rhana. You are amazing. Are you open for coaching? Are you a coach?
I am open for coaching. Yeah. I'm
wow.
like seeking people to like help me with like business strategy, because that's like
Great. Well, no, I meant like, are you available as a coach?
No, I'm not. Always ask for what you want for the universe, because they will provide. So I'm like, yes, I'm looking for a husband and I'm looking for a coach. Ideally, maybe one that does both.
Right. Oh my God.
It's actually.
I got you. I can help you with your business.
I think one thing that I will say is that like the feminine is so important, and like female support is so important, but I actually wouldn't be where I am today without the men behind the scenes.
Yes.
Like boyfriends, fiancés, like
I was engaged
my God,
briefly.
early divorce.
Okay, this is called doorknob technique in therapy. It's when you wait until the very last second to bring up like drop a bomb on your therapist, and she just
doorknobbed you.
She just doorknobbed
but
me.
I. I'm not I am just a woman who cares deeply about something and had no other choice but to pursue this path. I'm not like naturally business minded or strategic. And so men that I was dating would be like, what the hell are you charging? Like, raise your rates, double, triple, quadruple. And every single time I listened to them, the client was like, oh yeah, no problem.
I know.
It's crazy. And I just like was so nervous to ask for more money. Like, so really like, behind every strong woman is also like a man who
a power
man as well.
Yes.
And like I am very grateful for the men in my life that have like helped me with the business side, because it's just not my like ask me about drugs, big brain. Ask me about numbers, I botch everything.
Yeah. It's very normal, Rhana, and we at PowerFemme can help you with that.
I'm so excited.
Rhana, my last question for you is if you were I want you to imagine that you are in an elevator and you're going up to some really big, important meeting, and on walks this young girl. She could be the old version of you. She could be Jessica. But you've got 30 seconds to impart your wisdom on her. What do you want her to feel and know after having encountered you?
I really want her to like block out as much noise as possible, because her power and her calling is going to come from inside. And if she doesn't spend time with herself, as uncomfortable as it is in this day and age with so much stimulation, she's not going to figure out what moves her so much that she will develop this unrelenting passion for. And like truly, like as an entrepreneur, like you are living the high of your life of being in your power every single day. And if you can find that, if you can access that, it is so worth it to spend that time with yourself. And once you figure out what it is you want, manifest it, write it out, talk to people about it, like speak it into existence. Like everything in this world was once an idea. Like you can call that in. I wrote down, I want to be the drug lady 15 times. And then I go into a school one day and a kid says, so you're the drug lady.
I love you, Rhana. We're going to end it there. You can see why she was my best friend growing up. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
I love you.
I love you. That was so good.